A few years ago, I rounded up a ton of hardware that was responsible for punching out piano riffs back in the 90s. These are the piano sounds that built early club music, and we rounded them all up into our first Origins release called F9 Origins Old School Pianos. And we've now got them all wedged deep inside Serum 2. Let me take you around and show you what we've done here. The first oscillator, Oscillator A, contains the main multi-sample piano patch. This is set to the lowest MIDI note possible to the highest MIDI note possible, so full range on all keyboards. The second oscillator uses our impact circuit. Now, this is a very carefully processed impact multi-sample. It's quite short, and it allows you to dial in some classic transient power to the front of it. Let me show you the difference. This is without the impact on. Let's turn the impact up now. You hear that high frequency extra transient there. That's going to help your piano parts cut right through. You can also control the decay of that impact. In other words, you can have a longer transient or a much shorter. Good fun, right? And so far in my experiments, I've found this to be an unbeatable combination. Some of the patches vary in their kind of transient power at the front of them, but being able to dial some of this back in at any point to get that little bit of extra punch is just sensational. And as you can hear, the sample playback engine inside a Serum sounds really, really punchy. So for me, this is an ultimate combination. The third oscillator has a little pad that you can turn up with this macro here just to back your piano sounds up. It just uses one of the internal wavetables so you can select which octave you want to work on. And it will just help bring some body to the tails of this. The eagle-eyed amongst you will notice I've got the noise oscillator turned on. This is just a little hi-hat type transient, and thanks to some clever matrix work, it only really comes in when you have the impact set high. It just adds another little tiny top layer to the fronts of all of your notes. And just so you know what's going on in terms of routing, the main oscillator and the pad oscillator are going into filter 1. Filter 2 is dedicated to the impact circuit so that you can control that individually if you wish. Now, don't forget the drive and fat functions here, and even some resonance now and again if you're diving into sound design. The drive can really add some grit to things. And now let's have a quick look around the rest of the macros. Early workstations often just use mono samples, and they emulated a stereo spread by panning some of the lower keys in the piano patch to the left and the higher keys to the right. So we've emulated that within the modulation matrix, and this little macro here will control that. Obviously, we can control the level of the pad here. We've got the send to the delay circuit here, and the send to the reverb. We've deliberately used a long reverb for these patches and the convolution reverb inside the effects rack. The impulse response is from a Lexicon 480. Once the pack is installed, you can always access that in any of your own patches, like so. We've also got the multi-band compressor in action here, and that's what the last two macros down here, 7 and 8, deal with. So this controls the output of the high part of the compressor, and this one controls the mids. So if you want a duller piano sound, just pull the highs and mids back. So even with two controls, you've got plenty of options. And don't forget, you can change the crossover points on this multi-band compressor using the frequency selectors just here. So whilst we're here, let's quickly talk about the effects. In the main effects rack, we start with some distortion. You can always bypass that here. It's just to add a little bit of grit. We've then got an equalizer. We've done some basic work here, but feel free to play around as much as you like. Then that power straight into the multi-band compressor. Now, multi-band compressors and pianos work beautifully together. Don't forget to play with the attack and release times here and the other functions we showed you earlier. After that, we hit the convolution reverb, then another balancing equalizer. We just put that in place because we know it's always useful for people, and a compressor set to limit mode. This is just to catch the very tops of the transients before it leaves the plugin. On bus 1, we've got the multiband delay and another little reverb just to tickle those delays into place. And on bus 2, we've got an equalizer. It's only a shallow little lift and it's working in parallel. And this is one of the things we were so pleased to find in this update. You can see we're triggering it from both of the filters. So in other words, filter 1 contains the main piano sample. That's being sent out to that equalizer in parallel. And also on the impact circuit, with the impact circuit being delivered a little bit more. Now, just so you understand how we've set this up, envelope 2 is actually triggering the impact circuit. Now you see this modulation line on the fader all the way to the bottom. That is being triggered by envelope 2. That gives us independent amp envelope control over that impact circuit. This page is a very, very welcome addition to this synth, I have to say. We've all been used to Serum version 1 for a long time, but everything's been simplified when installing packs. Instead of having to put the files in place manually, this can now be done with just a few clicks. All you need to do to install this pack is head to the menu, click on this option, Import Preset Pack, and then select this .serum pack file, and the whole thing will be installed automatically. Now, please note, it does take a while to just decompress everything and install. It's just doing its thing. And there we go. Everything is now in place. So all we've got to do is come here into Packs, F9 Audio, OSP Serum 2 presets, and there are all of the pianos available. I'm on a Mac here, but exactly the same thing will happen on a PC. And if we open the presets folder, we can see what's actually happened. Inside the presets, you've got packs, and there's F9 audio, and there's the presets. And it has also installed all of the samples needed. Now, I know a lot of you, like me, like to roll your own patches. So we've also included all of the multi-sample data as an optional install. They are in SFZ format, and they have to be installed inside this multi-samples folder. And once they're there, you can flip any of the oscillators inside of Serum to multi-sample mode and pick them up. Here are the SFZ. So inside you'll see an interesting little structure. There is the actual file. It's basically a text file saying where to put all of the samples, and there are the samples connected. Now, we've included this so that you can basically create your own patches. You don't get access to the multi-sample mapping even with the pack installed. You have to manually put this in. It's very easy to do. Nip to the menu, open Serum 2 presets folder. All you've got to do is dump it in there. You can put it in the user location wherever you like. And all of these will then appear when you turn the oscillators to multi-sample mode. There we go. These are all of the core mappings. And this is where it gets interesting, as all of the sound design capabilities that you're used to in Serum, like unison modes, all of the rest of it are available. Now, in terms of warp modes, you don't get all of the options that you find in wavetables, but you do get a nice collection, including FM, phase distortion, AM, ring modulation, etc. Now, that doesn't mean you have to use these as piano sounds. Here's an interesting pluck sound I've created. And I've used some FM, so let's turn the submodulator on. That's what's being picked up here on the first oscillator. And here's a fab little lead sound I created. Okay, so this is where I get really excited. This changes everything, in my opinion. We now have an FM-capable, multi-layered, multi-sample capable system with Serum 2. And obviously, we have been stockpiling multi-samples here for a long, long time. So obviously, for me, this is just going to be a total playground. One fantastic little feature is the ability to embed the samples. Now, what this does, if you click on these icons next to the sample maps, it is going to embed all of the samples and the sample mapping used in that into your DAW file. So whether you're Logic, FL Studio, Ableton, you name it, it is basically going to add all of that data in. So we've kept all of the multi-samples under 64 megabyte, which is the limit of this, this feature allows you to send projects or archive them with all of the samples embedded. This is a brilliant little touch. Only thing I would say is this is going to increase the project size that you are saving and any related backup files that your DAW is automatically generating as it does so. If you head to the file browser, you can head to the packs section, and there all of the patches are available. We've also embedded a MIDI file so that you can preview them. Now, just a gotcha, to do this, we've had to put the MIDI file onto the first clip. Every now and again, a patch will load and this will be turned on. So in other words, you'll automatically hear the clip when you start your DAW. We're still not 100% sure why that happens and under which circumstances. So if it does happen, all you got to do is just turn it off. It won't occur again once you've done that. Do you want one more tasty little trick? Play a chord. Come to the Serum 2 logo, and just to the left of it, there's a new little icon that pops up. It will take whatever chord or note you played last and render it as an audio file that you can either drop into your DAW like so, or drop onto a quick sampler. Thank you so much for watching. This is our first experiment down this wonderful route with Serum 2, and we can't wait to show you what we've got coming next.